Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for joining us today for this important discussion. We'll be talking about the LEED system, covering updates to the LEED system and how LEED v5 allows for a more holistic approach and how these changes might tie into your existing sustainability strategy. Before we jump in, I wanted to give you a bit of background on who we are. Mackenzie, Jason, and I are joining from 3R Sustainability. We are a full-service sustainability consulting firm that works with a variety of clients from different industries. We support with sustainability management systems, climate-related work, including greenhouse gas emissions, measurement, target setting, etc. Also support with energy reduction and efficiency within the built environment and otherwise, and many other sustainability services. If you need help with it, we can probably help you. We also house our assurance branch, Sustainability Assurance Solutions, which helps with sustainability rating systems and also offers sustainability data validation and assurance. So some of that third-party requirements that are coming out of regulatory requirements or customer requests, that's something we can help with as well. So if anything comes to mind as you throughout this webinar, feel free to reach out via our email, or you can sign up for our newsletter using this QR code. This is the 5th webinar of 2025, which is awesome. The recordings for those previous few are on our website if you're interested in the topics. And then you can sign up for our newsletter again using that QR code to get information on the upcoming webinars. Our LinkedIn also shares up-to-date information on the webinars. So if you want to follow us there, whatever your preferred method is, please do. Finally, we'll be using the Q&A feature for this webinar. So if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A function, and we will either stop the presenter if it's relevant to the topic they're discussing, or leave it for the end. But you have experts in the room. This is your chance. Please ask questions and engage. And do a quick introduction and hand it off to my panelists. I'm Preston. I'm on our business development team at 3R and have a background in sustainability, consumer behavior trends, and work with a lot of our clients in the consumer packaged goods industry. I have the pleasure of working with our team here. I'll hand it to Jason to introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Jason Clark. I'm Managing Director for Built Environment and Energy Services here at 3R Sustainability. My background is I've been in the building and construction related industries for most of my life. I've been involved in sustainability within the built environment for the last about 17 or 18 years, with backgrounds in renewable energy, building science, commissioning, building energy modeling, and my expertise really comes from that kind of energy and building performance side. But here at 3R, one of my primary roles is really interacting with this LEED rating system for buildings. And for the past 10 years almost, I'm involved at a very high level within the LEED rating system, both on the consulting side across a number of different industries, and then also from the back end on the reviewing side of really kind of understanding this system inside and out. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Mackenzie. So I'll hand it over to Mackenzie.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mackenzie Pius. I'm also a member of our built environment team here at 3R. My background is really in environmental engineering, life cycle analysis, but here at 3R, work closely with our built environment team on LEED projects specifically. So have experience with existing buildings pursuing LEED, both on our consulting and review side, as well as new construction, again, consulting and review side. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into this webinar that we have prepared today.
Thank you both. I'm so excited too. We'll talk kind of at a high level before we jump in. We'll be discussing the LEED kind of world and why a new version, a bit more in the LEED v5, which is that new version, and how LEED connects to EcoVadis and other rating systems that the audience might be familiar with. And I know the title today is kind of fitting LEED V5 into your sustainability strategy. So I wanted to ground us here in what 3R thinks of as a sustainability strategy. Many of you may be kind of aware of what that means at a high level, but here we focus on answering these few questions. So what are the priority areas? What's most important for your organization specifically? There's a lot of noise out there and a lot of people probably telling you what to focus on. How can we take all of those stakeholders and kind of prioritize what to tackle first? The strategy is really a North Star. So understanding that's the goal, and then what will it take to get there? How much will it cost? What resources, people, process, and tools are necessary to kind of get to that gold standard North Star? And then finally, I think what differentiates us at 3R is the focus on business values. So all these things, they're just noise if they're not driving true business value. So we always want to connect back to that. And I think you'll see LEED in the new system is really tying into these different areas and can really be a driver of both business value and towards your sustainability strategy goals. So with that, I'll hand it over to the experts to talk a bit more about LEED. And again, please use that Q&A function and I'll interrupt the panelists if appropriate or come back at the end to wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks, Preston. So let's set a little bit of expectations here in terms of what we're going to be looking at with LEED and how it relates to sustainability strategies. We're going to talk a little bit about what LEED is, how it's evolved over the years, and then finally get into that V5 and how it relates to overall strategy. And what that means is we're not going to be doing a deep dive into the nuts and bolts, so to speak, of what the LEED rating system is. In other words, how do you earn it? How do you score it? Et cetera, et cetera. This is more of a high level. What is it? How's it changed? And what am I already doing that is going to help me achieve the LEED rating system when it comes to either new buildings or existing buildings? So a little bit of background on what LEED is. It is the world's largest and most influential building sustainability certification in the world. And that is measured by the number of projects, the number of buildings, the number of square feet around the world that this rating system has been used on. And I need to stress that this is a global rating system. This is available anywhere in the world. It was created in 1998 by the United States Green Building Council, which has since grown to include a number of other rating systems that I'm sure you've heard of, such as True, Sites, Peer, LEED O&M, which is obviously another version of LEED, cities, etc. So they're leading the charge when it comes to sustainability as it relates to the built environment that we spend so much time in and has so much impact on the world. It's adaptable to all types of buildings, and by all types of buildings, in my career, I've seen this applied to commercial real estate, housing, to factories and manufacturing, data centers, sports stadiums, museums, schools, warehouses, you name it, it's applicable. The caveat to that is that throughout the rating system, there's a number of building blocks, which are prerequisites and credits. And prerequisites are absolutely required to be met to say that I am operating my building to a sustainable standard. And the credits are how you kind of build up that story, and not all credits are going to be applicable across all building types. So a little bit of nuance there. And then just a quick number, more than 100,000 commercial buildings across the world are currently LEED certified, with over 11 billion square feet of real estate within that certified portfolio. And I would really encourage you to check out the link from that QR code, which goes to the 2024 USGBC Impact Report. It's a very lengthy and in-depth researched impact report from the United States Green Building Council on terms of how LEED is impacting the world through the built environment. Slide, please.
Okay, so as Jason mentioned, LEED is really adaptable to all kinds of buildings. That's really rooted in just the way it's designed. So kind of the two main buckets that we have here are new construction and existing buildings. So within those buckets, there are specific adaptations to the overall rating system that can be applied, and these are really intended to benefit the buildings as they are and their specific uses. So those are the things you see like healthcare, warehouses, schools, etc. But the main rating system, so where it says general for new construction and whole buildings for existing buildings, these are really intended to be applicable to everything else. So again, office spaces, manufacturing, sports stadiums and arenas, things like that. They can use this main rating system and achieve LEED certification or pursue LEED certification that way.
And going back to that impact piece. So this is telling that value or telling that story of value from just a performance perspective. So on average, and again, these numbers are coming from USGBC's impact report, and that the way that they gather this data is all projects are required to submit performance data over a period of time, both on the new construction and especially on the operations and maintenance side. And these numbers are compared to what would be considered a typically operated or typically constructed building to code. So just kind of going down through here, major impacts on GHG emissions, 34% reduction in GHG emissions on average across the LEED certified portfolio. On average, 25% energy savings beyond a standard built or operated building. 20% reduction in maintenance costs, and that is because there is an emphasis on durability and materials selection, and hence also embodied carbon and other related issues within the LEED rating system. 11% less water use. Water is a very big topic among many LEED projects. And also, how does the building interact with the occupants? We spend about 80% plus of our time on a daily basis inside of a building. So part of this is also how does the building interact or affect its occupants as part of its sustainability strategy. And this 80% report positive occupant impacts due to LEED. This is measured directly through occupant surveys on a number of issues affecting people within the building, such as indoor environmental quality, quality views, and other types of metrics that can be used by building operations, building ownership to really understand how the people within the building are being affected by it and using it as a tool for continual improvement, especially whenever this is related to, say, a lease agreement or other factors such as employee performance. Slide, please. The next, we'll talk a little bit about the evolution of LEED over the years. So you'll notice that there's a little bit of a gap between where we started from in 1998 and currently in 2025. So we kind of start this scale at 2007 here, and that's because there's a little bit of a convenient cutoff point here with the 2009 and LEED v3. There was LEED v1, v2, v2.2 before we get to LEED v3. And the reason why we have that as a cutoff point is because prior to LEED v3, the whole goal was to get the construction and commercial real estate industry just to recognize standards that were starting to come online to push the envelope beyond business as usual. In other words, how do we improve our operations? How do we improve our energy efficiency? How do we reduce our carbon output, etc.? So that everything prior to 2009 was just to get used to the idea of going through this type of system. Starting in 2009, we start to introduce a performance aspect, a performance above code, by using standards. Kind of the difference, I keep on using standards and codes. Standards are written by international organizations to address the most needed issues of a given set of problems, such as energy use. And they're written by organizations such as ASHRAE, or the American Society for Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, and they kind of put out there what's the new standard, and then municipalities or governmental organizations get to adopt pieces of those standards through codes which are enforceable. And you'll see as you go through here, 2009, 2013, 2014, 2018, 2019, 2025, all of these things are representing a leapfrog in the codes and standards that are being introduced to LEED. So it's the idea is to keep ahead of what the enforceable codes are across the jurisdictions that LEED operates in. And as you can imagine, especially in areas like Europe or California or New York or Illinois in the United States, the codes have been rapidly adopted, where in other areas of the world, maybe we don't have a lot of performance codes, or also in other areas in the United States. And that's why we have this LEED v4 and v4.1, because there was such a rapid adoption of newer codes that they had to do an update. And then you'll see 2025 LEED v5. This is recognizing that building standards and codes are no longer enough to look at to determine the overall sustainability of a building. Let's go deeper. Let's go into an overall sustainability strategy across an organization that owns and operates these buildings. And this is new for V5. Prior to that, it was mostly all just about the building. And now we're getting into more ownership, strategy, operations within LEED v5. And below you can see also how other major sustainability strategy and reporting instruments came online over the course of this particular timeline. Next slide, please.
Okay, so now that we've talked about kind of the general evolution of LEED, we want to dive deeper into what specifically LEED v4 or v4.1 was missing that led to the creation of LEED v5. So these topics here on the screen are very top of mind in today's world of sustainability, but that wasn't necessarily the case 10 years ago when LEED v4 was first introduced. So generally speaking, LEED v4 or v4.1, has a few credits that might address some of these topics, but overall really doesn't go deep enough to meet today's demand around these topics. So starting off with resilience and climate action, v4 just really needed to have a stronger effort to address climate change and making sure that businesses are picking risk management strategies as part of their operations and design in buildings. Circular economy and material transparency. This is a topic that really is addressed by v4 and v4.1, but I think it's also a topic that has evolved a lot in the last 10 years. And as a result of that, businesses really want better tools for tracking life cycle impacts of materials and, just updated requirements around this topic. Biodiversity. This is a pretty crucial issue that's talked about a lot. And v4 in a lot of ways addresses site-specific biodiversity issues, but doesn't really go beyond that to think about the surrounding community and things like that. And then finally, social equity and health. This is a major topic that is largely not addressed in v4 or v4.1, but we know that this is a pretty widely accepted piece of sustainability. Businesses really do want to be able to track their social impact metrics and get credit for the things that they're doing, because this, as we know, has an impact on sustainability as a whole and, environmental aspects as well. So that kind of leads us right into these 5 major impact areas of LEED v5. So USGBC determined these 5 topics to not only be addressed in v5, but actually to really make them the focus of the entire rating system. So starting off with resilience, the idea here within LEED v5 is to have projects gain an understanding of what their climate-related risks are, and then kind of build on that. So rewarding credits for, implementing protections in their design and operations against those kind of identified hazards. Carbon, similarly, there's a required assessment that gives projects and buildings a 25-year projection of their emissions, and this includes emissions from operational, embodied, and transportation carbon. And then kind of building on that again is there's other credits that will reward projects for making plans or otherwise implementing carbon reductions in their design or operation. Equity, this really touches on that social impact topic from the last slide, something that really has not been a part of LEED up until this point. And there is a new requirement for a human impact assessment that will really allow businesses to get knowledge around their demographics and surrounding community. And then, taking that a step further, rewarding projects for things like local employment and accessibility within the project. Health, this is one that has really kind of been a part of LEED up until this point, but going even further with rewarding projects for design choices that benefit occupants and create healthier spaces and things like indoor air quality. And then finally, we have ecosystems. So tying back into biodiversity from the last slide, there's a really big focus on maintaining biodiverse sites through things like restoration, stormwater management, and then just kind of like a larger tie-in to a lot of the other focus areas of LEED. So things like water efficiency, material selection, all kind of go back into that ecosystem piece.
Yeah, actually, Preston, if we could go back to the last slide before we leave this. So one of the things to keep in mind of where does this all come from? So we said that USGBC determined that these are the topics to address, and how does that come about? And the answer is that LEED is a consensus-based rating system on a global level. So I've mentioned that several times. So what does that mean? It means that there are LEED certified projects within more than 180 countries around the world, according to the impact report. And then how are these systems built? Built through volunteer consensus across technical advisory groups that are experts in all of these different fields. And a rating system takes about 200 people or so to write them, also according to the impact report. And then it's put out to public comment and then finally to ballot. So this is the whole idea of consensus driven. So it's not just USGBC's idea of what is appropriate, but this is really kind of getting the experience and the local knowledge from across the world to inform what these rating systems are publishing or putting out there for impact. And for LEED v4, there were over 23,000 public comments, and I suspect that it'll be similar for LEED v5, which will go online here in the first half of this year. So that's how these are put together and determined. Next slide, please. So how does the rating system, how does LEED, how's it implemented? And one of the things that we like to say a lot at 3R is the whole idea of the Plan, Do, Check, Act, or the OODA loop, or however you want to conceptualize this. So the idea is that you plan through your assessments and your policies, and these are all guided by the rating system. Again, we're not going into specific details because there's so much. We would be here for a very long time if we were going into the specific examples. Plan, act, put those policies and procedures into place. Or on the design side, you're putting that into your construction documents and into your commissioning regime and making sure that what you had planned is actually built. On an existing building, you're making sure that everything that was in the planning stage is actually into operation. And then you have a performance period over time. Is the building actually performing and getting you the value that is that was designed in the planning stage? And then if it's not, or if it's doing better, it goes back to that plan. And this is kind of a loop. So the whole idea of this is that previously LEED was meant to represent about the top 10% of buildings on a global level in any given geographic location that they're at. There is recognition for differing performance based on geographic location, climate zones, etc. So that 10%, you imagine there's a lot of other buildings that weren't necessarily able to take advantage of this. So LEED v5 is really meant to push that envelope into how can we get more projects in the door, make it flexible, and yet for this performance piece, the very highest levels really have to demonstrate a really outstanding commitment to sustainability and performance, mainly through carbon reduction. That's going to be one of the carbon reduction and resilience. That's going to be one of the major pieces to achieve that platinum level. And how do we do this? The leverage data. There is a data portal called ARC that the USGBC utilizes to monitor or to allow you to monitor this progress from both the project level and from a portfolio level. So that's where projects get to see where that performance comes in at, and then also USGBC gets to look at that and make adjustments over time through mid-cycle refreshes and other means. So how does this overall fit into ESG or greater or the greater sustainability strategy across an organization? And what we're about to talk about is a lot of the things that you're already doing at an entity level in terms of reporting are the things that go into the sustainability strategies at an asset level for buildings. Next slide, please. So this is meant to represent, on one hand, on the left-hand side, you've got the corporate sustainability reporting, and on the right-hand side, you have the green building. And these are different metrics or different areas that are important or are being reported to based on whether it is corporate sustainability reporting or green building. So you'll notice that some of the items in green building aren't necessarily things that you're going to be reporting on, but they're things that do impact sustainability at that built environment level. So how do these two things combine? How do they interact? So if we could merge them on the next slide, what we'll see is the overlap is actually quite extensive. So we've got things like energy consumption and efficiency, emissions reporting, water and waste management, customer satisfaction. Again, going back into how are the occupants affected by the built environment? The diversity, equity, inclusion. This is and employee health and safety and risk assessment. All three of these are new to V5, but are things that are already being done across sustainability reporting on a global level. So this was part of that attempt to streamline and align LEED with the overall sustainability efforts of organizations across the planet. And also the policies are derived from standards that you're probably already familiar with. So this is a little bit of a deeper dive into how do specific actions or specific requirements within the new lead rating system, how do they align across the three traditional pillars of corporate sustainability: environmental, social, and governance? And some of these are categories and some of these are actual requirements within the lead rating system, the new one, LEED v5. So environmental, really nothing new here in terms of energy, water, and waste. But now from the building side, we're also talking about climate risks. Where is this building located? Is it subject to flooding or um, coastal changes or severe heat? How does that affect the other items within the building and the occupant experience? How to set emissions targets over that 25-year period that was mentioned earlier. And then how do you put methodology in place for monitoring and improving that over time? Within the social realm, again, this is really largely the social and the governance. This is largely new for LEED, but these are things that are being put into place again to align strategy overall. Um, you know, employee safety and well-being is going to be a big one through assessments, impact assessment of indoor health, just to touch on a few, and then really this governance is meant to look at what am I doing at the asset level, in other words, the building level, but these things should be carried out across the portfolio level, across the entire entity. So this is just really bringing the building and the operation of building as a whole in line with sustainability reporting as a whole. And how does this, maybe Preston can give us a little bit better of a understanding about how these two are merged and how maybe this also is similar to EcoVadis.
Yeah, totally. So these topics, we talked before about the strategy and how that's kind of the North Star. And the first step to that strategy development was understanding the priority topic areas. So many of your organizations may have material topics if you've done a more formal materiality assessment, or it's maybe a bit less formal and it's just kind of topic areas. But these may look familiar to you as priority topic areas for either your organization or maybe your customers and peers that you've tried to benchmark against. So it's kind of great to see that this systems are kind of merging in a way. They're all trying to focus on the same areas, and the same goes for EcoVadis. So 3R uses EcoVadis as a sustainability management system tool to measure progress and continuous improvement for a lot of our clients. So EcoVadis uses key sustainability issues as their kind of terminology of the priority topic areas. So the four themes of EcoVadis: environment, labor and human rights, ethics, and sustainable procurement are consistent throughout every EcoVadis questionnaire. But depending on your company size, industry, and location, the overlap. The bright blue topics are represented in LEED v5, and it's really a pretty good coverage of all the sustainability issues that EcoVadis talks about. So again, Jason kind of mentioned earlier, like what are you doing at an entity, both an entity and organizational level to work on some of these topics, and how can some of the things you're already doing support these different raters and rankers and certifications and all the landscape of ESG tools to speak and measurement opportunities in both LEED v5 and EcoVadis. There's some good overlap there. We're happy to see that. I think we see a lot of reporting burden on a lot of our clients, and you just get so bogged down in all the different requirements. And it's nice to see that they're converging, even if slowly or you know, there's always differences between the systems, but it's nice to see that the topics are getting more streamlined. So yeah, Jason, anything you want to add to that as we kind of wrap up and get to Q&A?
Yeah, I would say the only thing that I would add, and it builds on what you were just talking about at the end, there just a few seconds ago. And it really is about streamlining efforts across an entire organization's sustainability strategies. And what I've seen so far within the built environment side is that a lot of these broader sustainability topics are not very well known within the built environment. So, you know, if business as usual is having an AEC firm, architecture, engineering, construction firm, take a building project from design to reality, there's really not a whole lot of expertise necessarily within these broader topics. So this is really going to cause a little bit of an evolution within building design, construction, and operation to bring everybody into the same system of vocabulary and the same system of overall awareness, reporting, operation for sustainability at a higher level, rather than just what are the paints that are going onto the wall, what are the HVAC systems that are being designed. It's much broader than that now, and that's going to be a major change in the industry for good, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I think the holistic lens and kind of systems lens is what we all need to focus on, because as maybe I've said a couple times, even in the last 45 minutes, there's a lot of noise in ESG right now, and it's good to focus on the things that are driving business value and that kind of really help the systems change. So we're going to transition to Q&A. You guys, again, we have the opportunity to ask these world-class experts some questions, so please use the Q&A. But while we wait for that, Jason, I was wondering, we work with a lot of clients that have kind of organizational level goals, and you're focusing on the built environment side of things. Do you have any kind of examples of how clients are using the system in real life, like maybe a project that has tied up to the sustainability strategy at large through the built environment lens?
Yeah, good question. I think that there's a couple of different examples, and let's do one from a new construction, in other words, building a building from scratch, and then one from an operations and maintenance perspective, looking at an existing building. From the new building perspective, one of the major drivers for this are other sustainability schemes across the globe, such as GRESB, which is looking at sustainability across portfolios of real estate, and particularly developers that are maybe developing out logistics terminals across different states or different locations across the globe. This is a way to show to their investors that they are taking these impact topics seriously and coming to the table of, we went through the exercise not just to design to, but actually go through the third-party certification of saying, yes, this building actually meets all the requirements set forth by the sustainability rating system, in this case LEED, which then goes to a greater level of reporting, such as GRESB, which then has an impact further up the chain into the financial markets. On the operations and maintenance side, I've seen this built out into how to measure KPIs for reporting on overall sustainability strategy goals. And right now, before the adoption of LEED v5, because we're still operating under v4.1 or v4 right now, the 5 major topics in v4.1 are similar. They're just kind of used in a little bit of a different way. It's energy, water, waste, occupant experience, and the impact of transportation. So all of these things have impacts either on water use or waste diversion or customer satisfaction or energy use and emissions output. And the system gives them the ability to dashboard that and to measure impact over time, and then also get credit for it back to the rating system, back to the certification.
Great, thanks. It's helpful to kind of like think about how this can be a tool more in practice and less in theory. Q&A is a little quiet, everyone. I wish you would have utilized, but I just want to thank you both today for presenting and someone in the nick of time asked a question. Thank you. What are some of the challenges you envision for new projects to face in achieving higher ratings and being able to provide accurate data to each of the additions in V5?
Preston, you want to take a first swing at that? Or Mackenzie?
Mackenzie, you might be better on the LEED side,
Yeah,
but I can jump in for EcoVadis too.
Yeah, sure. I guess starting with LEED V5, I think there's always a learning curve, whenever one of these new versions comes out, in terms of like what are the actual requirements around each new prerequisite and credit. And I think that USGBC and GBCI is really making an effort to work with project teams. And that's part of like this public comment period that Jason mentioned previously to get feedback on what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. I also think from a built environment perspective, these new topics around social equity, governance, things like that are really new to a lot of people in this field. So I think that area specifically is going to be maybe slightly challenging to kind of wrap your heads around, what does this look like in practice? What kinds of things need to be done? Yeah, so I think it'll be a learning curve, definitely, but it's one that's really necessary and following the trajectory of the whole wider sustainability field.
Yeah, so I'll build on to that in the last minute that we have here. So in order to score very, very high and really chase as sustainable of a building as possible according to the rating system, there are going to be adoption of new practices that are not standard. And one of those is the use of LCAs or life cycle assessments or within the construction for embodied carbon. So the whole idea is embodied carbon, operational carbon, transportation carbon. Where do you build this? What do you build it out of? And how are suppliers within the industry looking at reporting those the impacts of their materials as they make it to the site? Within the operational side, the whole idea is going to be how can I get the EUI, the energy use, as low as possible to make electrification viable. And one of the challenges that I've seen and heard around that, particularly within sustainable sports and other high energy intensity industries, is that the available capacity at the meter is going to be a challenge. So the whole idea of being able to reduce that demand through design and implementation to make electricity or electrification effective is going to be a major challenge that can be overcome, but it'll be a challenge.
I know we're kind of at time, but this question is tied to business value, and that's kind of our thing. So, Jason, could you quickly answer, LEED certification has a reputation of being an extra cost. How can organizations use the LEED 5 update to help kind of rebuild the business case to pursue certification?
Yeah, that's a thorny issue, and I would encourage everybody to look at the impact report that we'd linked to earlier. Talks a lot about what the calculated impacts are around insurance, around operating costs, around property values, etc. But I think a solid example that I think is going to be very relevant in the next couple of years is the idea of the climate risk assessments that are going to be required for this. And how that ties in is that one of the major conversations that's happening at industry level is how does this all tie into the insurance industry? And as everybody's seen, either in California in the last few months with the fires, or in the southeast part of the United States with hurricanes, or even up into the Appalachian Mountains with hurricanes last year. Who knew? Those risks are going to need to be assessed and known for insurance purposes.
Mhm.
And that's going to have a major driver, I think, on the financial impact of LEED, and using that as a system to help drive some of that cost reduction.
Yeah, I agree. I think the risk and revenue protection almost lens is really something that's coming up a lot. So, well, thank you. Thank you all for participating in the Q&A and for joining us today. If any questions come up, feel free to reach out through our website or LinkedIn, and we can circle back. So thank you so much, both of you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.